So good morning. Where there is doubt and despair, let me sow faith and hope. Today's true title for our talk. So this is our last Sunday that we're going to be exploring this beautiful prayer that we've been looking at this entire month, which is the prayer of St. Francis. And over 800 years ago, this prayer really, I think, is more timely today. Maybe so. I actually am seeing the results of it. I'm seeing our president talking with the president of Iran. I'm seeing some amazing peace opportunities coming. So maybe this prayer is actually coming into fruition at this point, which is great. But we still have our part to do. So I'm gonna say this prayer again, and please feel free to join in with me because I'm thinking you most likely have it pretty much memorized by now. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in the giving that we receive. It is in the pardoning that we are pardoned. It is in the dying to self that we are born to eternal life. And as we have explored the different lines of this prayer each week, I've asked that we each truly commit to being instruments of God's peace, God's love, God's pardon, God's faith, God's hope, God's light, and God's joy. Not just this month, but from this moment forward. So today we're going to combine two of the lines, and that is where there is doubt, let me sow faith, and where there is despair, let me sow hope. And even though we're taking both of these lines and talking about them this morning, my focus is really going to be on where there is doubt, let me sow faith. Because I believe that when we sow faith, in the face of doubt, the despair will take care of itself. So this morning we're going to talk about a topic that's talked about in a lot of spiritual communities, everywhere, almost every Sunday morning, I'm sure. And that is the topic of faith. The master teacher Jesus said that if we have but the faith of a mustard seed, have you all seen how small a mustard seed is? We can move mountains, and we can. It could be that some of us have a bad taste in our mouths about faith because in the past we've been given an answer like this is, like this when we've been have questioned our spiritual leaders. We've said, well, why is this? Or how this could be.
Maybe
and
it's just the way mustard seeds taste.
So, oh, my child, don't ask those questions. Just have faith. Well, and this is where what was interesting in, when I posed these questions to my mother and she wrote them down in my book, one of the questions was, is God a boy or a girl? And my mother answered, well, he's our Father in heaven, so he must be a boy. And I said, this is age 4. Well, I think he was a girl, but then his eyes changed colors, and then he became a boy. I know. Maybe I did. I don't know. And the other one, when I was 6, I said, where did all the people come from? And my mother said, well, they came from, God created Adam and Eve. And I said, well, then where did the Indians come from? Question mark. So, it's amazing because children are asking these things and they're asked to trust a lot of things on faith. And so I started thinking back on our children because I kept baby books for my kids too. And I don't know that they ever had any because I don't think that we ever asked them to believe anything that they could not actually understand at that point. I think we perhaps explained it a little differently. Not sure. Because in religious science, we really invite people to ask questions, number one, and our kids have been raised in this since day one. In fact, we invite you to inquire. We want you to ask questions. We invite you to dig deep and dissect what you hear here. Don't take it on who am I? Don't take it on what I say or anybody else. That we want you to discover this for yourself. We want you to come to your own understanding because that's when you're able to prove it. And when you can prove it individually in your own life, that's when it becomes real and true for you. In the conclusion of the Science of My textbook, Ernest Holmes wrote, "I would rather see a student of this science prove its principle than to have him repeat all of the words of wisdom that have ever been uttered." Isn't that amazing? So no, we don't ask you to take things on faith. And having said that, however, faith does play a very vital role in our lives. It's vitally important. So let's start at the beginning as we discuss faith. Let's give it a definition. In the Glossary of the Science of Mind textbook, Dr. Holmes says this about faith. Faith is an attitude so inwardly embodied that the mind can no longer deny it. What is the attitude that, when so inwardly embodied, when sown, will remove doubt and despair? The attitude that there is a power for good in the universe greater than you realize, and it is expressing as you. Isn't that amazing? That's a little bit of a spin on Dr. Holmes' famous quote. There's a power for good in the universe, and you can use it. Wayne Dyer, in There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem, relates how he came to have this attitude. At one time, he seriously, and this is Wayne Dyer, questioned the very existence of God. He was more of an agnostic, a pragmatist who felt he couldn't see it. If he couldn't see it, touch it, feel it, or smell it, then it didn't apply. This example seemed to clear all of it up for him. Imagine, if you will, a junkyard filled with millions of pieces of random junk. Wires strewn about, bits of metal, tires, cushions, electrical machinery, screws, nuts and bolts, glass, toilet seats, and everything else you can imagine just laying around haphazardly. I'm sure there's places we've driven by where it looked like that. Suddenly, a gigantic wind blows through this messy junkyard, and the pieces of junk are all thrown up into the air, colliding with each other, flying and crashing here and there. And just as suddenly, the wind subsides, and there in the junkyard, just by happenstance, luck, or random coincidence, is a jumbo jet, a Boeing 747, all ready to fly, where millions of previous pieces of junk were strewn. From random rubbish to precise perfection by accident. Seriously? Really? We're going to believe that? Dyer wrote, "As I contemplated the absurdity of this, I thought about how I proclaimed such an explanation for the universe with its zillions upon zillions of component parts, all arriving and interacting with each other in perfect symmetry, all just working out coincidentally by sheer chance and happenstance. I revised my viewpoint to accommodate a newly arrived at sense that that there has to be an intelligent, creative energy at work here. This is an intelligent system that we are a part of. There is a force, a power, and a consciousness that created and supports this system. That force is omnipresent, and therefore it is in you and it is in me." Let me add to Ernest Holmes' definition of faith in the glossary of the Science of Mind textbook. In spiritual terminology, faith means a belief in the presence of an invisible power and law which directly and specifically responds to us. Dr. Holmes also said that those who have great faith have great power. So, how do you get faith? Wouldn't it be great if we could just go down and, I'd like a box of faith, please. That would be nice. All right, here we go, Rob. Who's never tasted a mango?
Me.
Okay, come on up here. Okay, wait a second. You're not going to taste this just yet,
Okay.
but just stand. Okay. Who has tasted a mango? Okay, who wants to come up here?
I will.
Okay, come on up here.
I'll take that.
All right. Now, tell Rob what a mango tastes like.
It's sweet and juicy, and it's like you just want more of it.
Well,
Really? I
Okay.
eat them like all the time, a whole one.
Okay, I couldn't find any fresh mangoes.
it's
Have
hard
you
to
have you
find
had a dried mango?
Yeah, they're
Okay.
not quite as good.
Okay, what do they taste like?
They're more leathery. They're not moist, but they're really sweet because the sugar is intense, and so.
Okay, taste the mango.
You have to go
It's hard to
to
find a ripe one.
the farmer's market.
You have to go to the farmer's market. Well, now I know that.
Do you like it?
not bad.
So how did the actual taste compare to the description?
Well, this is dry. Versus Real sweet, but it is very sweet.
It is very sweet. Okay.
Just dryness is the only,
Okay. Okay.
but a dry mango, gotta be dry.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. You can sit down now.
Thank you.
Okay. So it's not easy to describe the actual taste of it though, right? I mean, other than just sweet.
It's like a peach.
Well, moist and dry.
It's a little
Yeah.
bit perfumey.
A little bit perfumey, but a little bit tart, a little bit.
Yeah.
It kind of tastes like a cross between maybe an apricot and a watermelon. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to really put it into words exactly what the taste is, other than just sweet or dry or juicy, isn't it? It's kind of
You
hard
have
to.
experience.
You have to. But once you experience it, then you know. Once you have actually experienced what it tastes like, then you know. So it's analogous to our ability, this experiment, tasting experience, to have faith where there is doubt. Because how do you know unless you do? And it has to be a personal experience. Someone with faith cannot say, well, this is what will happen to you. It is a personal thing. Just as we cannot know the taste of a mango or really anything else unless we have experienced tasting it ourselves, we cannot know faith without having the experience of God in our lives. If you rely on the testimony and experience of others as your means of establishing faith, you will always have some doubt where you want there to be only faith. If you're always just listening to someone else and their experience of it, it's kind of like, getting to look at the pictures or a slideshow or a video of someone else going to Hawaii when you've never been. And it's just not the same. Even when you come back and look at the pictures, it's not the same. You have to actually experience it to know it. You're really in the same position as Rob was, never having tasted a mango. So it's impossible to bring faith to the presence of doubt until you abandon the idea of knowing God through the words or experiences of others. You must make a concentrated effort to establish your own conscious contact, and this is where meditation comes in. Dr. Holmes also says in the glossary under faith, faith can be consciously generated. So how do we generate faith? How do we move to the place of knowing God? Faith does not spring forth fully orbed, so here are some suggestions for cultivating it. Number 1, develop a prayer meditation practice. Remember, the purpose of prayer is not to influence God to grant you special favors, but rather to remind yourself that you are always connected to God. As Søren Kierkegaard, the famous Danish theologian, once put it, prayer does not change God, but it changes the one who is doing the praying. Prayer is a reconnection to the spiritual consciousness, to God. Prayer is both the good and in both the good and bad times, because I'll tell you, sometimes you really are what's the word I want, motivated to pray when things are not going so well, but we forget when things are going really well, like wow. But prayer in both the good and bad times, when you feel the presence of a problem or when you feel blessed and peaceful. Cahill Gibran put it this way: you pray in your distress and in your need. Would that you might pray also for the fullness of your joy and in the days of your abundance. That's when it's a good time to do that. This kind of communicating with God gives you an indestructible faith to present to all doubt in your life. One of my favorite prayers of connection, which I often use and which can be found in the Science of Mind, is perfect God within me, perfect life within me, which is God. Come forth into expression through me that as that which I am. Lead me ever into paths of perfection and cause me to see only the good. Boy, that is so meaningful to me because it's so easy not to see the good. Sometimes it means not reading the paper or glossing over those antagonistic articles that I don't want to see. Meditation is an exquisite practice for reducing stress, relieving fatigue, well, especially the way Rich meditates, nourishing the soul, and having a general feeling of well-being. However, the primary value of meditation is in allowing you to make a conscious contact with God and thus establish an inner faith. That is the divine presence that is available at all times because it's right where you are. It's never out there or away. It's always right where you are. God is indivisible, the one power, the source of all life. God is wherever you are, omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Meditating and prayers of connection allow you to come to know God rather than knowing about God. So on to number 2. Practice developing trust in the unseen. Wow, how many of us, when we want that, we want it in our hands. We want to see it to believe it. Someone once said the real victory of faith is to trust God in the darkness. In the Science of Mind it says, when we learn to trust the universe, we shall be happy, prosperous, and well. We must learn to come under the divine government and accept the fact that nature's table is ever filled. Never was there a cosmic famine. God is always God. In Good to Great, by Jim Collins, he explains the Stockdale paradox. Admiral James Stockdale, have you heard of Admiral James Stockdale? Was the highest-ranking United States military officer in the Hanoi Hilton prisoner of war camp during the height of the Vietnam War. Tortured over 20 times during his 8-year imprisonment from 1965 to 1973, Stockdale lived out the war without any prisoner's rights, no set release date, and no certainty as to whether he would even survive to see his family again. How did he deal with this through 8 years? I never lost my faith. In the end of the story, I never doubted not only that I would get out, but also that I would prevail in the end and turn the experience into a defining moment of my life, which in retrospect, I would not trade. He was asked who didn't make it out. That's easy, he said. The optimists. The ones who said, we're going to get out by Christmas. And then by Christmas, the time would come and go and they would still be there. Then they'd say, well, we're going to be out by Easter, and Easter would come and go. And then it was Thanksgiving, and then it would be Christmas again, and they died of a broken heart. This is a very important lesson. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be. As the Buddhist proverb tells us, if you're facing in the right direction, all you need to do is keep walking. Number 3, refuse to dwell on thoughts about the problems in your life. Make an effort to refuse to keep any problem in your thoughts for more than a few moments. Suzanne often says, if you can't think positively about something, don't think anything about it. Don't give it any power at all. Don't think about the problems. What do you do if an ember from a spark of fire lands on your arm? What do? You flick it off. You get that thing off your arm before it can burn you, and we have to do the same with our problems. We can't keep them around long enough to injure us or bring us harm. Don't let them stay and potentially harm you. Remember, what we focus on and put our attention on attracts more of that into our lives. And we certainly don't want more of what we consider to be a problem, right? So once you've become aware that you're languishing in a problem, consider the various alternatives and then silently go to God and literally turn it over to a higher spiritual energy. If you've done what you can do and there's nothing more for you to do, turn it over. By surrendering, you create an energy field of receptivity for the solution to appear. Because when your mind's cluttered with the problem, there's no room for the solution to appear. When you continue to go back to the problem with your thoughts, consider it and then let it go. You'll receive your solution along with the knowledge of not only how to work it out, but the awareness that you have the capacity to do so. You may wonder why you haven't seen it before, when it is now so very clear. That new clarity is the result of not cluttering your mind with the thoughts about your problem. Clarity is also the consequence of being willing to say to yourself, I do not know how to do this in this instance, but I'm willing to let go and turn this entire thing over in the knowledge that the solution rests in the hands of the one, all-knowing power. As I say this, you may be thinking that this is easier said than done because you can't believe that you can turn off your thoughts and stop dwelling on something that is truly bothering you. Wayne Dyer writes, I suggest that this kind of thinking that you have very likely practiced for a lifetime that keeps you rooted in a problem-plagued life. In fact, you can develop a new self-talk regime which which involves turning problems in your mind over to God. And I know from personal experience that this is true. By refusing to dwell on the problem and turning it over to the divine intelligence and creative force, that force that hangs the planets in the sky, you are allowing the same divine intelligence to flow as you. Imagine that. The intelligence that holds the planets in their place is flowing through you. This spiritual awareness brings a solution to the problems that you are mulling over and over in your mind. So number 4, finally, as you develop your faith, use your faith to bolster others whose faith is waning. This is where we get to share. Does anyone have something they'd like to share about having faith and holding the high watch for someone else in their life, where they have known that the true oneness of spirit was coming through, that there really was not a problem when someone has come to them with an issue? The one that I remember was when Rich called me after we paid off our $8,500 bill to the IRS, and that very next week we got a bill for $2,000 from 2011. And I just said, I know there isn't. He started to panic. I said, oh no, we do not owe that. You call our tax person, it's gone. I am knowing that there is no problem there. Call our tax person, found the file that we needed, the piece of paper, send it in, and it was gone. It was gone. I was able to do that. And that was a huge step for me to be able to do something like that. Have you ever known the high watch for someone? Your sister?
Yeah, yes, my mom, all my family. Recently my brother, he just had to find a new house after 15 years of renting where he lived.
Mm-hmm.
And it took him, almost 2 months, huh? Because he's a little particular, but that's okay. So Mother, after she couldn't take his calls anymore, my sister was talking to him because she's more adamant than we are. And then finally, I just kept saying, I know that, the house is right. And I found one that morning on the internet, and and he had it by the end of the day.
And her sister said, Suzanne, tell all your mother and tell her to call that real estate agent.
Yeah,
Because I lived in Las Vegas. So I did. And I told Mickey, you have the house. Other
Yeah.
people were waiting. I talked her into it. And he goes, I didn't know you three worked together.
Yeah.
God worked through
Which
each
is
and every
useful.
one of you. I
She's
think.
used to it. He's in between the two sisters.
But see, when you hold the high watch for someone
And there was
else,
times I just couldn't even call him or talk to him because I
Oh.
knew he was going to bitch or complain, so I was just praying silently, and my sister was calling
He
him.
even cried and talked his landlady into letting him stay another month.
Yeah.
She did.
Yeah, so
But he
anyway,
got a nice place, and she
so
found it.
we're crisis free right
But
now,
you
right,
knew.
Mother?
I don't know.
oh yes, you
It
are.
takes 3 of us to keep
No,
him calm.
no, you are crisis free, and it is good. It
We
is
are,
good.
yes.
It is good.
Oh, I got one.
Okay.
My sister was an alcoholic, really bad. She would even drink vanilla, anything that had alcohol in it.
Oh dear.
And so she was always going to jail, and everything like that. And so she would always call up my mom, and my mom was kind of like, what do you call an enabler
Mm-hmm.
and everything. And so she called up and one day, and I answered the phone, and she says, can I talk to Mom? I said, she's busy. What is it you want? Well, I'm in jail. I said, well, you know what? Can you get a quarter? She said, yes. I could call somebody who really cares. And I hung up on her. And I am now her best friend because I made her stand up and take responsibility.
Wow. But see, because you had a belief
You're
that there was
strong-
something
you're strong
better.
for her. That's
You were
called
strong for her. You knew that there was
tough
something
love,
better.
right?
Well, and that can be hard. That can be
Yeah,
difficult
it's
sometimes.
not an enabler.
That's
Yeah.
true. So faith, an attitude so inwardly embodied that the mind can no longer deny it. Let's, all of us, today, begin to cultivate faith by proving to ourselves, through the ways that I've outlined, that there is a power for good in this universe, greater than we realize, and it is expressing as us. That level of faith is vital to our very existence. William Blake once wrote a clever couplet which summarizes the idea of this powerful request of St. Francis to sow faith where there is doubt. He wrote, if the sun and moon should ever doubt, they would immediately go out. Let's not go out, but instead shine with the glory of God, for all of the world to see. Let's close this service with a meditation. Lord, now I am an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, I now sow love. Where there is injury, I now sow pardon. Where there is doubt, I now sow faith. Where there is despair, I now sow hope. Where there is darkness, I now sow light. Where there is sadness, I now sow joy. Lord, today I am your instrument. And so it is.